Hi guys, so before we get started with the making of, I will describe you a little bit more about my workflow, and for that I'm going to show you one by one the software I'm using. I'm using Cinema 4D, DAZ Studio and Photoshop. I've been asked many times which software I was using, and these are the one I'm using mostly. I can make almost all my picture with them. Sometimes I'm using other software, but it's very rare. So I'm going to stay just on these ones for the moment and show you what they look like and how I use them. So to start, I'm going to show you Cinema 4D. So this is what Cinema 4D looks like. It's a 3D application. I'm not sure if you are familiar with 3D application. I know from the start it may look a little bit complicated because there is a lot of things that are going on here into the interface, but don't worry, we're going to see every part in details on each video I'm going to make. But to give you a better idea why I'm using it, it's what I need to create all the content for my characters, such as hair, clothes, or any object, a weapon, anything. It's what I'm going to use. So this is the first part of every picture I make. Then there is the second part, which is DAZ Studio. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. So this is the studio. I have already one a character that is opened, but it's not important. So as you can see, it's also a 3D software, but it's not meant for the same kind of task that Cinema 4D is. This one is what I will use to set up my picture, decide what it's going to look like, make the pose, make the expression of the character. All the content I have created in Cinema 4D, I'm going to bring it here, and then I can use it. For instance, the clothes, all the content you see here is things I have done in Cinema 4D. Once I'm happy with what it looks like, I can create a pose, for instance this one. And then I'm going to do what we call a rendering. Rendering is the output pictures you're going to make from your 3D software. For instance, I'm going to do this. Can even change the look of the face. And then we render. If you have a good computer, it will go fast, and if not, it will take a little bit of time. But you have to understand that 3D takes at least maybe, in my case, it takes between 10 and 20 minutes to make one picture. And I'm going to make many of them in order to get different type of lighting. And once they are rendered, I send them to Photoshop. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in Photoshop. So this is Photoshop. I already have some of the renders I had made for Syndra, so it can be a good example to show you what it looks like. In the interface, you have generally your tool on the left, but you can change it the way you want. You can actually set up the entire interface the way you want. You will have things like brush, your colors, your layers, and that's it. So I'm just showing you the different render I had made. For example, this one was my main render, I think. No, it was this one. And generally I will make many renders to have the different type of light I need. This one was a backlighting, and this one was for the reflection, for instance. So this is just to show you the different software. Now we're going to get into the first part of the making of, with the modeling of all the content I have made for Syndra. So to start working on Syndra, I'm going to have to make a hairdress outfit, and for that I'm going to use the template from Genesis 8 Female, which is something I exported from the studio. You can see it here. It's a 3D mesh, and I have also different objects you can see here, such as hair module, which is hair strands, and different preset I have already made, such as a full body geometry. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and it's what I'm going to use to create all the cloths and all the objects that are on the body directly. Sometimes if I need specific objects, I will model them outside and then I will bring them into this scene. But it's just to give you an idea how I'm going to start. So to begin with the hair, I will use one of the hair modules I already have. I made a disc, a geometry disc on the back of her head, so I can separate the hair from her head from the ones that are on her tail. I find it easier to separate each part of the hair, so it's faster to work on different strands and not have trouble when I want to use the brush in order to give them the shape I want. Sometimes when you have too many hair, it's hard to find the one you want to select, and so that's why I'm separating everything. So for the moment I'm working mostly on the tail, so you can see I'm using different kind of tool. Now I'm switching back to the rest of her hair. So as you can see, there are some strands that are missing. I'm going to use a tool that is called Add Guides. So each strand is a guide, and it's where the geometry of the hair is going to be built. It's built around those strands, those guides. So for the moment I'm just filling the parts that are missing. I think I'll make a video to explain how the hair module works, because there is a lot of option that it's hard to describe on the moment I'm working. So now I'm working on the side hair. So to go faster, I used the hair I created for the head. I'm just using the brush in order to give the shape I want, and remove those I don't need. To remove the guides, I generally select them and just type delete directly. It's the easiest way. I'm using the scale tool to scale the strands. again, and the brush to give the shape. So now, since I did not have enough hair on each strand, I decided to clone them. It's a function you can find into the hair module. You can either create hair from a selection on the geometry, or you can literally clone different strands on a guide. So now I'm just changing the color, because when I'm going to export it I can keep the color, and it's a way to remember for me what it's meant for. So this is it for the hair for Syndra, for the modeling part at least. So like I said in the previous video, I will show you how the hair module works. I wanted to put that into the making of because the first part is basically the hair, but you cannot really see all the options the hair module have, and it's a bit confusing, I think, to see it for the first time and not get into the details. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. So let's start with the first tool. When I make hair, I use a tool that you can find in the option Simulate and Hair Tool, Add Guides. You can use that option or another option that is Add Hair. But if you add hair like that, well, when it's working, of course. But wait. When you add hair, this is what it's going to do. So, if you add hair like that, it's going to add it to the entire geometry. And not at a specific place, which is not very good when you want to make a set of hair for a tractor, because you don't want to have the hair everywhere. You have different kind of option on it's an object on Cinema 4D, which is called hair, and you have all sorts of options. For instance, basic is not going to be important for you right now, but what you have, the most important when you create a hair module, it's this little part, which is called guides. In this part, it tells you where the guides are going, which is here. It's linked to the sphere, and it tells you how many guides the object has, so you can change it. It tells you how many segments it has. I'll come back to that later. And the length. Pretty simple. That it's just telling you how it's going to dispose them. So if you choose polygon or polygon center, wait, it's not working. Here you go. If you change that option, it's going to set up the guides into different location. You can have the polygons or different type of element. I have to explain to you what polygons, vertex and edge are, I think, but for the moment let's keep that option separate. So on the guides, as I said, it just tells you where the guides are going. Then you have an option to say how many hair you have on the object, which is 5,000 at the moment. You can of course display them. Right now it's just displaying only the guides, and if you want to see the hair that you're going to have in the hand, you'll have to change the display option from guideline to hairline. You can also put guide polygon or hair polygon, but it's going to be heavy. And you can have a level of details, because as you can imagine, if you have 5,000 hair on your display, it's going to be very hard to even work on the object. So we're going to keep it low. Right now I just show you all the options we have on a hair object. Generate is very important. It's actually how I'm going to decide what the hair strands are going to be. They can be hair objects, sorry, not objects, but how to say that, hair particles, which are only working on Cinema 4D. Or there can be geometry, such as, for example, flat, which will be, well, as it says, it's just a polygon. It does not have a thickness, really. It's just one strand, and it's pretty much, well, flat. You can have different type of geometry. You can have, when you say triangle, it means that there is free angle on your strand. If I make it thicker, you're going to see here. As you can see, it's a triangle, and of course, if you make something like square or cycle, it's just going to define how many segments the thickness of the object possess. For example, it's become a square. It's going to be a square. So that makes it easily to understand. Of course, the more geometry you have, the more heavy it becomes. So for me, on my model, I'm working almost all the time with flat. So this way, I don't have too much geometry, or else it becomes impossible to work with. So that's for generate. Dynamics, it's something that I don't use for the picture because it's only for animation, but if you press play, for instance, you're going to have this. This is the basic dynamic of the AR module. You have a lot of options, and I'm not going to show you those options right now. I will show you them on another video to explain how it works for animation. But it has enough options to make good dynamics. Alright. Force is part of the dynamic. It's telling the gravity and things like that. Gauge is also for the dynamic. It's to, once you make an animation with the dynamic, it's pretty much how you bake it. You keep it safe, and you don't have to do it all over again. Partings, I honestly don't know. I never really cared about it. Culling too. And then said it's the seed well. It doesn't really matter. And Fong is just it's not very important here. It's more modeling than hair, actually, that part. So that's for the first option. I'm going to show you how I set up guides separately. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to go back on geometry. No, sorry, objects. I'm going to select Hair Tool, Add Guides. So the option Add Guides will create guides just at the place I want. It's not going to create them randomly or on precise polygons set on by the hair object. So for instance, here, it's creating a new hair object automatically. First things first. Alright, I'm creating only one guide so you can see clearly what it's doing. When you have a guide, as I said, you have different segments. The segments are going to tell the guide how much subdivision it has to create the shape you want. The less segments, the more the shape is going to look not incomplete. So for instance, I create something like 40. I'm gonna have a lot of detail. So another thing, as I said, when you start working on the guides, you have different options on how you interact with them. If I start with the option tip, I will only be able to move the tip of the guide. I won't be able to move the guide itself. It's good when you want to work only with the tip, which makes sense. But if you of course want more options, you will need to use the other ones. Root is more important when you want to select only the roots. Then you have points. I generally don't use them because point is when you want to select very precisely one of 2 points from a guide. What I'm going to use is the option guide itself here, and that with different tools such as the brush I can easily create the shape I want. So I'm going to review a little bit of the different tools we have. So as you can see in my interface, I moved the different tools directly in the interface so I can have them very easily to access. So the first tool you're going to learn to use is the selection. When you click on hair module, it's how you're going to be able to select different guides separately. You have of course a selection on square or on shape here. The other tool, I don't really use them. I will maybe try to show later, but it's not very important for what we are doing right now. Those are mostly for selection, and those are mostly for action on the guides. For instance, this one is the move. You can pretty much move your guides the way you want. I don't really use it. Sometimes, but it's very rare. The scale, which is very important, it's how you change the shape of your hair in scale. The rotation, I don't use it, but it can be important. It will rotate the guides considering an axis, which right now is the root. Can be the cursor too. But if you do that, it's going to unroot your hair, which is why I'm not using it a lot. Then you have the brush, which is the most important tool you will have to use. With the brush, you can pretty much do what it says. It's paint your hair. sculpt them, decide the shape they are going to have. It has many options. For instance, visible only says if you have hair that are inside the sphere and visible only is not activated, it won't be able to find it. The shape is, well, it's the shape of your selection, of your brush, sorry, but it's the same kind of type of option. But the most important option in the brush tool will be the mode. These are very, very important. By default it's move, so it's this one, but then you can have things like repel, which will repel the guides, I guess you can say so. You have twist, which will create wave or stuff like that. You have smooth, which will create will clean your hair strands. It's not always working perfectly if your guides are very messed up. And you have things like scale. Scale is interesting on the brush because you can scale very easily without having to first select, then scale. You can do it just by using the brush on the place you want to scale. If you use control, it's reverse the scale, and if you just use it normally, it will scale on the normal direction. So that's it for the brush tool. I don't use this one. I never use it. Clump is pretty much all the hair you have when you select them. It will bring them together. It's very good when you want to create specific type of hair. The curl it's a bit complicated to use, but it's very efficient. It's just it's complicated. So it creates, as it says, curl, but you have a lot of options, and it's a bit hard to go into the detail right now. You have the cut tool, which is very useful too. You can cut your guides. You don't have to scale them. You just literally go and cut as you want. It has many options like visibility. It's the same kind of problems. If you have hair that are inside the sphere, for example, you won't be able to cut them. You can decide which one you're going to cut. For instance, if I select only one and I put the selected only option, it will cut only this one, not the other ones. Very important. Push, I don't use it. Straight is very useful when you have many hair and they have a direction that you don't like and you don't want to go on each one of them and put them on the right place. You can do it all at once by bringing them back straight on their axis. It will use the normal of the polygon, I think. Not sure exactly, but it's very useful. You can, you have the add guides that I use it to create that hair object. So you have many options, like radius will decide how much radius you have when you create your guides. the count, how much guides you're going to create inside that radius. Good to change the density at which you create your hair. And the option like minimum spacing and step, they do pretty much the same, but minimum spacing tell how close two guides can be when you try to create a new one. If the option is very high, you won't be able to create many guides at the same place. But if it's very low, you will be able to create as many as you want. It's good if you want to make sure that you don't create too many guides at the same place, because it can be very heavy. Interpolated is very important, so I'm going to show you how it works. When I create guides, at this moment they are all created with the same size. They have a length here, and if I change it, we'll see it's not the same as the one I created before. So if I revert it to how it was before, I'm going to create lots of hair. I'm going to change their shape, and you're going to see how interpolated work. For instance, I'm doing that, and when I'm going to create hair, if interpolated is not activated, it's going to create them like that. But if it's activated, it's going to follow. It's very useful when you want to add hair from a precise place, and you don't want to do the same work again.